Well, goodbye, my friends. Nice to have known you. I'll see you in a month's time. Sad to see you go. Hello everybody, Mutton here. It's a bit late today for my video. I was waylaid a bit earlier, so it's coming a bit later than usual. We've had the weigh-in today, but we'll come on to that a bit later. Just to fill everybody in where you are, I'm in East Didsbury, outside a church, having my daily exercise. Odd you might think, yes, at this time of the day, but it's somewhere where I used to go a lot in my childhood. Not into the church, because I'm not religious, but around this area. A lot of fields and green areas, which I was lucky to have as a child. I'm a bit worried actually about the weigh-in, because of those vegetables I cooked earlier in the week. Later we'll see the scores on the doors and whether it's actually done any damage or not. I'm on week 6, or have just finished week 6 rather, of this 8-week diet. So we need to have lost by the 8th week at least 15 kilos, but I want it to be more like 19. Although I reckon I did lose 4 on the very low calorie stuff that I did earlier. But if I've not achieved my goals, then I will do extra weeks, up to 12 weeks. They don't recommend doing it for longer than 12 weeks. Normally this is an area where people would come out to drink and eat in the evening, particularly pleasant in the summer in the beer garden here. I imagine if outdoor hospitality comes back significantly before indoor, this place will be tremendously popular. And as you can see here, even the Indian restaurant has outdoor seating, so I can imagine after a few beers at the pub, that's going to be a tremendously popular place. Well, I'm standing outside one of the many parks in our area. Again, lucky during this pandemic to have green spaces to go to. I was going to show you around the park, but I'll have to do that next week because it's a bit dark now. I'll have a little stroll around whilst I give you this week's news, and big news it is indeed. As you know from the previous video, I'd been called up by the NHS, or rather texted, to be given an invite for the vaccine. So, of course, I had to inform the trial clinic of this, and they've unblinded me. They've told me that I've actually had the monoclonal antibodies and not the placebo. So this leaves me with a dilemma. Do I take the real vaccine as well? Obviously the combination between the two hasn't been trialled. Or do I stick with what I've got? My first thoughts were to stick with what I've got and see the trial through. But it transpires they are actually interested to see the effect of the vaccine on top of it. The manufacturers don't think there's a problem with me taking a vaccine as well. So, whilst I would normally just stay with what I've got, again, if it works for Donald Trump, it's good enough for me. But unfortunately, this idea of green passports or vaccination passports is rearing its ugly head. And whilst I think there is a use for them for travel, I'm not sure they're going to be that fair to people unless they can produce exemption certificates for various people who, for whatever reason, can't have a vaccine. I'm going to have to take the vaccine, I think, otherwise no certificate, no travel, and as you all well know, travel is one of the major facets of my life. Anyway, so what would you do in my situation? I'd be interested to hear your views if you want to leave any in the comments section below. In the meantime, I've been given a list of slots if I want the real vaccination, and I'll be booking one soon. Unless, of course, I change my mind. Again, I must admit, I really wasn't expecting to be given this vaccine invite so quickly. They really have been going like the clappers in the NHS, which I suppose is good news because it might help us get back to normal a little more quickly. Although I wouldn't hold up much hope of even domestic travel being allowed before May. Be lucky to get any before that. Now, to go back to the diet, I must admit I'm wobbling a little bit. It's now, as I film on Friday the 19th, it is out of 56, but that 56 could turn to 84, so if that's the case, I'm only just over halfway through. Having said all that, after this week's weigh-in and the next two, if I can get below 114, then given I had those 2 weeks on the low carb, I imagine I'll have done enough. And I think the things I'm missing is stuff like meat or curried vegetables or even grilled vegetables with a bit of olive oil and what have you, fish and so on and so forth. Not so much carbohydrates, and definitely not sweets. I mean, those shakes are so sweet, I'm starting to get a bit sick of them. But hopefully, if I follow the path of righteousness, only 12 days to go. 11 after today. And even when I come off the shakes, it's not immediately, it's 2 shakes a day and then 1 shake a day. So it's still another few weeks on these things, regardless of how I end up. Because of course we can't just suddenly stop after these liquid things, because there's still a long way to go. And I'm not quite sure at the moment how I'm going to go about all this. I was thinking low carb rather than low calorie, because counting calories is so difficult, and when I use oil in like a stir fry, I mean, I've no idea how much I'm using. I tried sticking to a tablespoon and then everything started sticking to the pan. Better chefs than I would be able to tell me how I can avoid this. I have a feeling low carb will be the way forward. Again, please feel free to leave comments below. I know everybody's got their pet favourite types of diet, and some people think this is rubbish, that's rubbish, this is great, that is great. Bear in mind what's come before whatever the next phase of the diet's going to be, and it's obviously got to be something that keeps the weight off and reduces it even if more gradually. It doesn't have to be something that loses it as quickly as this. But then again, I'm not going to spend 6 years losing half a kilo a week, because I know that when I go abroad, for example, or I eventually see my friends, I'm not going to be having celery carpaccio and salmon salad. I've not committed myself, for example, to spend 5 dry years, so it has to be something that's reasonably effective. Although another argument for staying on the shakes for the full 12 weeks is that it's easy, you know what you're doing, you have few choices, it's just the mental aspects, mind over matter as it were, whether I can carry on. But it does at least stop you from diving into the fridge and eating stuff that you probably shouldn't eat. When you're in the middle of a lockdown, it's very tempting to do. It's a comforting thing to do. There's not much else to do. Well, there are other things to do, but sitting in front of a book or a computer all day, every day for 100 days, not so easy. Well, I'm back after my evening's exertions. I did do the weigh-in and blood test earlier in the day, so I know what the results are. But before I share them with you, let me tell you what else has happened. First of all, I had an email from the NHS telling me that I need to shield until the end of March. Now, it's a bit late for them to tell me that, and maybe they found out something new. I am on the list of 1.7 million people who should have been in a higher risk category, apparently. Why they've done that now, I've no idea. However, since I've actually had something that is almost certainly efficacious, I'm less worried about that. I think the monoclonal antibodies will be okay. Not that I'm taking risks anyway, but I'm not going to shut myself in all day either. And even bigger news now, I've had my invitation for my vaccination and I've made an appointment. Let me show you. So, unless I change my mind, on Wednesday I'll be going in to have my first jab. I think I need to take these jabs because otherwise I won't have this certificate if I've just taken part in a trial. Maybe if it gets authorised, then I'll get a certificate, but who knows whether and when that'll happen. So they still want to keep me on in the study though, as I mentioned earlier, so they want to see the effect of one vaccine on top of the other. Also, in the UK, to get as many people vaccinated as possible with a jab, the doses are being spread out. Now, in most countries, 3 weeks is the gap between the first and second dose. Here, it's 11 or 12 weeks. Again, I wouldn't know what's right and what's wrong, but some other countries are following the UK policy, I know. So this means that I should have had both shots sometime in the middle of May and be fully protected halfway through May or towards the end of May, which is something to look forward to. Okay, without further ado, let's go to the scores on the doors, which were taken earlier today. Okay, so let's see what the scores on the doors are. Well, 118.1 could have been better, could have been worse. I know what the culprit's been, what to blame. Okay, let's go and see the blood sugar. Okay, now for the blood sugar. Okay, so, it's okay, 5.8. So, a bit disappointing. Okay, it's progress in the right direction, but let's have a look. The weight now is 118.1 kilograms, which is a weekly loss of 1.3 kilograms, which, given what I'm doing, is not actually a lot. And if it carries on like that for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have extra time, hopefully not penalties as well. This does represent a total weight loss of 11.9 kilos, which is not to be sniffed at, and 2 kilos a week, which is what I've averaged on this diet, will get me to 16, but usually it's a bit more than 16. And I think those vegetables I cooked, which are probably perfectly fine in the next stage, are just a little too oily and saucy for this stage, so I'll leave them in the freezer where they were. Now for the blood sugar, now this went up very slightly from 5.7 to 5.8, but 5.8 is okay. It's still in non-diabetic range. I'm not totally sure why it went up, because I wouldn't have thought those vegetables alone would have pushed it up. Maybe I had a particularly inactive week, even though I'm not supposed to exercise strenuously on this diet, but it had been extremely cold last week, and whilst I went out to get a few things a couple of times, I didn't spend much time, in fact as little time as possible, outdoors. Less than 6 is fine. I have been checking my blood every day, so I'm keeping on top of that because obviously I want to reduce the little bit I consume in vegetables if it goes over 6. But it has varied. It's been 5.1, 5.4, 5.2, and actually today's measuring was the highest it had been all week, so I'm not so worried about that. So unless I suddenly develop COVID symptoms, I'll bring you every moment of my jab or my vaccination next week. I don't know what I'll be allowed to film, but hopefully something. Surely the needle going into the arm without the injector's face should be a minimum that I'll be allowed to show. And I'll also keep you informed of how I feel afterwards, because a lot of you watching won't have had anything as yet. Hopefully that'll go alright. Hopefully week 7 will go alright. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And hit that alarm bell icon if you want to keep in touch with the videos as soon as they come out. Bye for now. See you next week. And don't forget, you can't beat a bit of mutton.